Once again, the topic of my marriage came up today. I was sitting with my five closest friends, and as always, they didn't spare a single chance to tease me. One of them laughed and said, "You were the most desperate one to get married, and look at your fate now. All of us are married, some even have two kids already, and you, still single. If you want, we can talk to your family. What's the real reason they're not getting you married?" Hearing Abrar's comment, I frowned, shook my head, and replied sarcastically, "Laugh all you want. My time will come too." But how could I tell them the truth? That so much money had already been spent on my two elder sisters' weddings. By tradition, I should have been married first, but for some reason, my mother started planning the wedding of my younger sister instead. I had once told my mother, "This is the right time for me to get married. All my friends are already married. I've attended their kids' naming ceremonies." And here you are, completely indifferent to me. Instead of understanding me, my mother scolded me so harshly that I felt like smoke was coming out of my ears. She snapped, "Why are you so desperate to get married? Can't you see your sisters are still unmarried? Let them settle first, then I'll think about your wedding." Just then, my friend clapped in front of my face to snap me out of my thoughts. "Where are you lost, man? Are you even listening? Tell us, are your family ever going to marry you off, or are you planning to stay single forever?" I laughed and replied, "Relax, I will get married, just waiting for my princess. And princesses don't come easy. The day I get married, the entire neighborhood will watch the grand celebration." And once again, the conversation shifted to their married lives. That was how our friendship worked. We spoke freely and joked about everything. One of my friends started praising his wife's cooking, and as he described her delicious meals, I couldn't help but drool. I'd had enough for the day. I made up an excuse and left early. On my way home, all I could think about was, when will my wife come? I wanted to be married. I wanted to bring home a beautiful bride. I wanted to share that special wedding night with her. I wanted to pamper her for the rest of our lives. But most of all, what I longed for was that first night after marriage. The dreams I had built around it were countless, yet my mother was too occupied with my sister's weddings. And me? I spent most nights just tossing and turning in bed. That night, too, I quietly went to my room and slept. The next morning, I had a day off from work. I woke up late, took a bath, and sat with my mother in the courtyard. On purpose, I grabbed a mirror, pulled at a few gray hairs on my head, and said dramatically, "See this, Mom? I've started getting white hair. I just hope the princess of my dreams doesn't end up marrying someone else after seeing them." This time, when she heard that, she looked at me with a thoughtful gaze. Then she said, "You know what? I've been thinking too. Why not start planning your wedding along with your younger sisters? I'll find a good girl and marry you off as well. It would be easier to get both of you settled at the same time." As soon as she said that, it felt like fireworks went off in my heart. A smile lit up my face. From that day forward, my mother actually began searching for a girl for me. And then, the big day finally arrived. I was dressed as a groom. I thought that just like my wedding had been full of celebration and joy, that night, the wedding night, would be filled with love and memories I'd cherish for a lifetime. But everything turned out to be the complete opposite of what I had imagined. It was the third day of my marriage, and I was sitting on the sofa staring angrily at my ill-mannered wife. She was barely half my size and physique, yet carried herself with the arrogance of a queen, like some Cleopatra descended from the heavens. Sure, I admit she had fair skin, striking features, and long, thick hair that reached her waist. But even then, what was with all that attitude? I had always dreamed of marrying a beautiful woman. But when I once told my mother about the kind of girl I wanted, she had replied, "Look, son, the kind of girl you're describing, you'll get her, no doubt. But remember this, the more beautiful a girl is, the more dramatic she will be. And if a pretty girl agrees to marry someone like you, it's usually because of the job or the lifestyle. But once she's in the house, she'll rule over you with her beauty, and you'll end up dancing to her every whim." Back then, I had brushed off her words. I laughed and said, "Oh, come on, Mom, why do you think like that? I'm a man. Your blood runs through my veins too, just like you've never bowed before your mother-in-law or your sister-in-laws and kept everyone in check. No one from the extended family even dares step foot in our house anymore. I'll do the same with my wife. Don't worry, I'll keep her in line." Mom had thrown her slipper at my back that day, but I had no idea I was actually speaking my own fate into reality. I had already made up my mind. This girl would not get her way tonight. With my strong build and confidence, she couldn't intimidate me. And now that she was legally mine, I had every right. Even if I didn't take her rejection seriously, what could she really do? Nothing. At worst, she'd cry and throw a tantrum. That's it. That was the selfish and careless logic in my head. After all, even on the wedding night, she hadn't let me come near her. She said, "I need some time." I had replied, "Time? We were engaged for over a month. That was your time. What new tradition is this? Girls nowadays throw tantrums on the wedding night, asking for mental connection, emotional comfort. What nonsense. All of it just excuses to avoid their husband." She shot me a sharp look. I'd said a lot more than I should have, but honestly, I had just returned from hanging out with my married friends and cousins. They'd all told me, "Whatever you do, don't fall at your wife's feet on day one, or you'll spend your whole life massaging them." It was my first marriage too, and men, just like women, feel nervous. But unlike women, we can't show it. If we do, we'll hear taunts forever. That's why I had walked into the room confidently, like a boss. I sat beside her. The moment I looked at her, my heart began to race. I reached out to hold her hand, but it was cold and tired. I assumed it was just natural shyness. Honestly, that gave me a little relief. Maybe she wasn't as bold as she acted. Maybe I could still win her over with dominance. But the moment I grabbed her hand, she pulled it away. I looked at her in confusion. I hadn't even pulled out the ring I was going to present as part of our little post-wedding surprise. She suddenly stepped away from me. "What's wrong?" I asked. She said, "It's better if you stay away from me." I was stunned. "What do you mean by that?" She replied, I can't tell you the real reason. But if you come close to me, your life will be in danger." Her words widened at my eyes. I stared at her, shocked. "What are you talking about? Why can't you tell me?" I asked. "Listen," I added sharply, "Anis, I know all these tricks. Girls these days pretend just to get sympathy and attention. I'm not the type to fall for drama. I'm a hot-tempered man. Don't try to test my patience." But she raised her hand and said firmly, "I'm telling you the truth. I swear to God, if you come near me, you will die." Her words chilled me. There was something about the way she said it that didn't feel like drama. It felt real. I asked her again and again what she meant, but all she said was, "The time hasn't come yet. When the time is right, I'll tell you everything. But it's better if you stay away from me." I don't know why, but there was something in her voice, something so serious, so final, that I couldn't even bring myself to touch her. I simply said, "Okay, fine. Don't stress yourself. But you have to understand, the kind of relationship we're in now doesn't allow for this much distance." Still, she wouldn't explain. "Just give me a few days," she said. "I'll tell you everything." I thought, a few days isn't a big deal. I've waited all my life. What are a few more days? I sighed, grabbed a pillow, and laid down on the sofa. It wasn't easy, but eventually I fell asleep. The next day was our wedding reception, and she looked absolutely stunning. I could barely control myself. I mean, what could be harder for a man than living under the same roof with a beautiful wife, legally wedded to him, yet bound by restrictions that felt impossible to ignore? The first 2 days passed somehow. On the third day, my friend asked, "So, how's the newly married life going?" I gave him a tired look and muttered, "Going great." This was the third time he had asked. I had brushed him off with a laugh on the phone before. Abrar wasn't just a close friend. He was my confidant. He made fun of me without filters, but he was also the one I trusted the most. When he asked again, I tried to dodge the question, but he saw right through my dull expression. He said, "Married men usually glow with happiness. But look at you. You're sitting here like a buffalo that's just been milked dry. You remember how much you teased me when I got married? You didn't spare a moment. And now, when it's your turn, you're sitting there like a statue. Tell me honestly, did your wife say something weird to you?" He looked at me with a knowing smile. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Let's just say I'm still living like a single man." What I didn't understand was, what exactly was wrong with my wife? What was she dragging me through, and why? She behaved perfectly fine with everyone else in the house, chatting and laughing with my mom and sisters. Even when women from the neighborhood came to visit, she acted like she had known them forever. But the moment she looked at me, all the color would drain from her face. She talked to me like I had done her some unspeakable wrong. Sometimes I even wondered, was she in love with someone else before me? But then I'd shake the thought off. No, no, I shouldn't doubt her. She seems innocent, soft-hearted. But if that's true, then why won't she tell me anything? Aren't husband and wife supposed to share everything with each other? Abrar teased. What? Your wife isn't giving you any grass? He laughed at his own crude joke. That's when I decided I had to talk to someone. Maybe she was playing me for a fool. When I confided in one of my office colleagues, he just burst out laughing. I stared at him, confused. Stop laughing, I said. Tell me what to do. But he couldn't stop. Your stupidity. It's too much. So what, she said you'd die if you went near her and you actually backed off? Come on, man. He slapped me on the back and chuckled. These are just dramatic games girls play. What is she going to do? Kill you in your sleep? You're being played, bro. His words shook me a little. And then came Abrar again, saying, Dude, girls always talk like this. You've never dated anyone, never even had a real friendship with a girl, so you don't get it. This is all just classic behavior. Go home, be firm, talk to her directly. Watch. She'll drop the act, and the two of you will finally start your married life properly. His words gave me courage. I'd made up my mind I wouldn't back down this time. Before heading home, I bought fresh flower garlands and a bouquet of red and white roses. When I entered the house, I saw my wife sitting in the living room with my mom and sisters, laughing and chatting like everything was perfectly normal. And the smile on her face, it nearly made my heart melt. A jolt ran through my entire body. The moment her eyes met mine, her smile vanished again. I walked toward her with the bouquet in my hands, but before I could say anything, my younger sister piped up, Whoa, whoa, brother. Who are these beautiful flowers for? I've never seen you bring such pretty flowers before. My wife blushed, and I was flustered. My mother and sisters were sitting on one side, and my wife in the middle. I nervously looked at my mother and stammered, they're for you, Mom. As I extended the bouquet toward her, she waved it away. Oh, come off it. Don't try to act all dramatic. In all these years, I haven't seen you bring a single petal for me, and now suddenly you're the flower boy? I felt embarrassed. Quickly, I plucked out a few flowers and handed them to my mother and sisters. The rest I gently placed in front of my wife. She smiled quietly, and from her reaction, I could tell she was happy. My mother and sisters, though pretending to be unfazed, were probably pleased deep down too. After sitting with everyone for a while, I went back to my room. Now all I could do was wait. For the past week, I had been watching her games. Most nights, she only came into the room after I was already asleep, but not tonight. I had made up my mind I wasn't going to sleep. It was the 8th night of our marriage. She had spent the entire day with my mother and sisters. It was now midnight, and still she hadn't entered the room. I sat there smoking a cigarette, waiting for her. My mind was already made up. Tonight, I wouldn't let her escape. She was playing me like a fool, and if she truly had something to hide, why marry me in the first place? Come on, what's the worst that could happen? I claim my right as a husband and die? That's absurd. When she finally entered the room and saw I was still awake, she froze at the door. Her nervousness was visible. I said, "Close the door and lock it." Hearing that, her hand paused at the latch. "You're still awake?" she asked, her voice shaky. "You haven't slept?" "No," I said firmly, and tonight neither will you. At that, she looked even more frightened. I got up, put out my cigarette in the ashtray, walked to her, and locked the door myself. I wrapped her in my arms, but she was cold, literally pale, as if the blood had drained from her face. She was trembling, her heartbeat pounding. "I told you," she started, but I placed my hand over her mouth. "Enough. I've heard enough, I said, my voice hard. Whatever happens, let it happen now. Before I could even finish, she used all her strength to push me away. You're not taking this seriously, she cried. I'm telling the truth. Why don't you believe me? Why do you want to die so young? Please, just listen to me. Tears streamed down her face. Her desperation was real. I paused. My frustration had been boiling for days, but something about her fear felt genuine. Still, a poisonous thought entered my mind. Maybe she loves someone else. Maybe her parents forced her to marry me. Her behavior didn't seem like innocent shyness anymore. I looked at her with cold anger. Enough is enough. Just say what you really want to say. What is this nonsense that I'll die if I come near you? Do you think I'm an idiot? She looked up at me through her tears. I think you're not happy with this marriage, I continued. Your parents must have forced you into this. I bet you're in love with someone else. Is that it? My voice was sharp, accusing, full of disgust. Look, I added, I'm a man of dignity. I would never touch a woman who holds another man in her heart, especially not if she's sitting in my room as my wife, hiding behind a fake smile. Her tears intensified. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I just stood there, watching her cry. I didn't offer sympathy. I didn't show her kindness. Because no man can bear the thought that his wife might belong to someone else, not in her heart, not in her mind, and then still deny him his rights under the sacred bond of marriage. I said, crying won't solve anything. If you think a few tears will make me sympathize, help you reunite with your lover, wait for him to get a job or return from abroad so he can finally marry you, and I, like a fool, will waste my time supporting your little love story, then you're wrong. I'll divorce you right here, right now. As soon as I said that, she removed her hands from her face. Her eyes were swollen from crying. No, please, for God's sake, don't divorce me, she pleaded. I swear I'm not involved with anyone. I don't know how to make you believe me. I said coldly, if that's true, then prove it. If there's really no one else, then give me my rights. Treat me like a wife is supposed to treat her husband. Saying this, I held her by both arms and stood her up. I wiped her tears, gently pushed the scattered strands of hair behind her ears. I had never wanted to see her this way, crying, broken. If there was truly no one else in her heart but me, then what was there to be upset about? She said, I love you because you're my husband. But I've been terribly worried for the past 2 months. I know that if we move forward in this relationship, you'll die. I looked at her in utter disbelief. She was still stuck on the same thing. I sighed, annoyed, took a deep breath and said, why do you keep repeating this nonsense? Have you ever heard of a man dying on his wedding night just because he touched his wife? What are you, a witch, a ghost bride? Did someone cast a spell and force you to marry me? If something else is going on, tell me. We'll figure it out together. But stop repeating this idiotic line about me dying. Why would I die? I'm perfectly healthy. I don't have a single medical condition. No doctor has forbidden me from being married. If there's something wrong with you, then tell me. But stop this cycle. It's driving me mad. I was getting angry again. She looked at me stunned and shaken. Who told you all this? I snapped. Where did this foolish idea even come from? She looked down and softly said, I can't tell you, even now. Why can't you understand? Take any promise from me, any oath. I'm not seeing anyone. I've never encouraged another man. I'm not that kind of girl. In our family, we were raised strictly. Our parents always made the marriage decisions, and daughters were expected to spend their entire lives with the man chosen for them. I am that kind of daughter. The moment I saw your photo and learned that you were the one I was to marry, my heart naturally accepted it. I'm telling the truth. I really like you. Can't you just be patient with me a little longer? I will tell you the truth. She was crying, begging as she spoke. I had thought I could overpower her, intimidate her into submission. But I was wrong. She was folding her hands, pleading again and again. Please, don't do this now. Don't touch me tonight. I want to be with you for life. But if something happens to you, How will I live without you? I was still holding her by the shoulders, but now I let her go. I picked up my pillow again and returned to the sofa. She stood there, sobbing quietly, before finally turning off the lights and lying down. It was 3 a.m., and I was still awake. Her words kept ringing in my ears. There had to be something, some reason she was trying to stay away from me. But what could it possibly be that would lead to my death? I began to doubt her. No woman behaves like this with her husband. I was devastated. I had dreamed of this night, of this marriage, so many beautiful expectations. But my wife was something else entirely. She barely came up to my shoulders, fragile, thin, delicate. I should have been worried for her life, but here she was, warning me that I would die. There had to be another man. Maybe not an affair, but at least someone she liked. That would explain everything. Why she was doing this. Why she was trying so hard to push me away. I didn't want to speak to her anymore. I spent the entire night wide awake. The next morning, I got up before she did and left for work without having breakfast. My eyes were swollen from lack of sleep. I kept yawning, barely able to concentrate. While I was sitting at my desk, my colleague turned to me, looked me up and down, and said with a sly smile, "Looks like someone didn't get much sleep last night." "Did your wife not let you sleep last night?" My colleague chuckled, giving me a nudge on the shoulder, but I was already annoyed. The dreams, the hopes I had held on to, they were slowly starting to fade. I glanced at my friend with tired, frustrated eyes and said, "Don't tease me, let me work." Surprised by my reaction, he blinked and said, "Whoa, what's wrong? I was just asking because you look totally out of it. Don't tell me. You actually saw death last night?" He was joking, but I was the one becoming the joke. I clenched my jaw, then gave in. I told him everything. What my wife had said, all of it. His expression turned serious. "This is big, man, really serious. You should pay attention to her. I mean, she's your wife, and I shouldn't be saying anything, but it kind of sounds like she's hiding something. Maybe even cheating on you." I stared at him, heart sinking. "You really think so?" He let out a heavy sigh. "I hope not. But if I'm being honest, and I say this only because you're my friend, it does sound like she's emotionally connected to someone else. Maybe not in love, but maybe someone used her, manipulated her. She might be hiding it out of shame. And now that you're married, ibesend, she's scared the truth will come out. That you'll leave her. Whatever you decide, just be sure." "Think it through," he said, just before our boss called him away. I was left staring blankly at my screen. My hands had gone cold. She was my wife. She lived with me. She was under my protection. I had already made space for her in my heart. They say once the seed of doubt is planted, it's nearly impossible to uproot it, and I was experiencing that firsthand. I didn't want to suspect her, but now my thoughts kept circling back. Maybe it was true. Maybe that's why she kept pushing me away. I couldn't even bring myself to go home that evening. My friend invited me to stay the night at his apartment. I was deeply troubled. I didn't want to treat my wife harshly. I loved her. I wasn't one of those men who abuse or insult their wives. When my friend returned from his room, he was holding a glass bottle and a bowl of ice. He sat beside me with a sly look on his face. It was alcohol. I had never touched it before. I refused, but he poured a few gulps down my throat anyway. "Drink it. It'll give you courage," he insisted. "Then go home and show your wife who you really are." As the alcohol took effect, his words started making sense. My blood was pumping. My heartbeat raced. He even dropped me home that night. It was already late. My mother and sisters had long gone to bed. When I knocked, my wife was the one who opened the door. She had been waiting for me. I could barely stand. My legs were unsteady. She rushed to support me, helping me inside. She kept asking, "What's that smell? What did you drink?" But I was too far gone. The anger, the frustration, the suspicion, all boiled over. As soon as I entered the bedroom, I locked the door behind me and pulled her into my arms. She resisted, begged me to stop, pleaded for me to come to my senses, but I was already lost. That night, intoxicated, I finally took what I believed was my right as a husband. There was no doubt now. I had been the first man in her life. She hadn't betrayed my trust. She hadn't let me down. But she cried. She cried like her soul was breaking. Her sobs turned into gasps. She kept saying, I don't want to lose you. You'll die and I won't survive without you. I don't even remember when I passed out. The next morning, I woke up with a crushing headache. I groaned and she rushed over. What happened? Are you in pain? Can you breathe properly? She asked, panicked. I looked at her and the entire night played back in my mind. Get me some lemonade, I muttered. My body feels like it's been hit by a truck. She hurried to the kitchen, returning moments later with a glass in hand, but her hands were trembling, her face pale and tear-streaked. Do you feel okay now? She asked. Last night. Do you know what you did? Do you know what could have happened? I was up all night praying, crying, but begging God to keep you safe. I stared at her in disbelief. What was she saying? I made her sit down in front of me, held her hands gently, and said, Look at me. I'm fine. Perfectly healthy, see for yourself. So, now tell me the truth. Why were you keeping me away? When she finally calmed down and was sure I was okay, she spoke. And what she said made me grab my head in shock. I stared at her, dumbfounded. She wiped her tears, looked at me, and asked, Why are you looking at me like that? I'm telling the truth. I genuinely began to question her sanity. I pulled her into my arms, gave her a gentle pat on the head, and whispered, You crazy woman. Do you even know the thoughts your behavior put in my head? I feel like punishing you all over again until you cry yourself unconscious, but now I just feel pity. And then she told me the real reason. And after hearing it, I was more confused than ever. She looked at me with complete seriousness and said, I believe in astrology and the movement of the stars. There's a renowned astrologer in our family. Whatever he predicts always turns out to be true. I used to show him my palms. He would read them, and every single prediction he made came true. When I was in the 9th grade, he told me to stay away from red clothing for 1 entire month. He warned me that if I even touched anything red, I would fail my exams. I was extremely cautious, but one day I slipped up and accidentally touched a red garment. Despite performing well in the papers, I failed. That's when I started believing he was right. I laughed at her words and said, That's just coincidence. It doesn't mean anything. But she immediately replied, Wait, let me finish. Later, when I was about to go on a college trip, that same astrologer happened to be visiting our house. He looked at me and said, Your stars are misaligned, Tatsaban. If you go, you'll face a terrible accident. I didn't believe him. I told him I didn't trust his predictions. It had taken me so long to convince my parents to let me go, I wasn't going to back out now. But the moment we hit the road, our bus collided with a van. The bus nearly plunged into a ditch. The window next to me was open, and I couldn't keep my balance. A sudden jolt threw me out. I clung to a rock for dear life. The driver and teachers rushed to pull me back, but by then, my left arm had already been fractured. While the others continued the trip, I was rushed straight to the hospital. Since that day, she said softly, I could never again doubt that astrologer's words. I was convinced. Then she told me there were many more incidents like that. Before our wedding, she said, I went to the astrologer again. When he looked at my hand, he said, Your first husband will die. I broke down in tears. We were already engaged. I had already fallen for you, just from seeing your photo. I told him I loved the man I was going to marry. So he gave me a few remedies and told me, on your wedding night, don't let your husband come close to you. He told me to maintain distance for at least 3 months after marriage. Otherwise, your life could be in danger. That's why I was staying away from you. But nothing happened to you. As I listened to her, I held my head in disbelief. What kind of superstitions had taken root in her mind? I had always thought she was sharp and sensible, but now, looking at her with clear eyes, I realized she was incredibly innocent. Naive, even. I spoke gently. Look, whatever happened before, those were coincidences, nothing more. You've wrapped yourself in these false beliefs. But the truth is, what we think, we attract. If we think good, good things will happen. If we think bad, bad things will follow. That's how the mind works. As I said that, I remembered everything my friends had told me about her, how they had planted doubts in my mind. And here I was looking at my wife with those very eyes when, in reality, the truth was something else entirely. Thank God I discovered it before it was too late. Otherwise, who knows what I might have done? I had already decided that if she kept avoiding me, I would complain to my mother. Maybe even take her back to her parents' house. What's the point of keeping a wife who won't fulfill her duties? I had thought. But now I knew. She had just one flaw. She had placed her fate in the hands of stars. I gently cupped her face and placed a kiss on her forehead. Where do these ideas even come from? I asked. Who believes in palm lines anymore? Those lines change with our thoughts and our actions. And astrologers? They twist their words to sound convincing. Even if something turns out true, it's just chance. Look at me. Did the astrologer's prediction come true? I'm perfectly fine. I'm alive. Right here in front of you. She looked down, ashamed. Finally, she had to admit, those predictions weren't real. She felt guilty, realizing she had denied me my rights over a baseless belief. But I pulled her into my arms and whispered, "It's okay. We've got a whole life ahead of us. Let's live it together." I had been drowning in suspicions and what-ifs. But after hearing her story, I felt a strange sense of peace. I was thankful that none of the predictions had come true. If they had, maybe I wouldn't even be alive today. A smile spread across my lips as I pulled her closer to my chest. From that day on, I saw a new side of her. She was kinder than ever before. To everyone. It felt like joy had returned to my home, and I had begun to enjoy life again, peacefully.